People have been debating LGBTQ rights for a long time. We hear it everywhere, even at schools, in our classrooms, on the lunch line, and at GSAs. Originally, these school clubs were known as gay-straight alliances. Now they're known as Gender and Sexuality Alliances. The purpose of these clubs is to support queer students and push for change. At least, that's the goal. But let's be real. Many GSAs aren't really doing that. Like, at my school, the GSA is actually against talking about politics. It's more like a queer social club, with just a few members.
So, the GSA is a safe space. Do we want to keep this a space where we don't talk about politics seriously to preserve how people feel? Or do we think this is an issue and we should be talking about it?
LGBTQ plus people are still under attack. It used to be that people were debating the ethics of marriage equality, but now there are debates on the validity of just existing as a trans person. We need to be talking about it. But some GSAs aren't equipped to handle these renewed challenges, and this lack of visibility is dangerous. Roughly 80% of LGBTQ plus youth who attended school in person during the 2021 to 2022 academic year experienced harassment or assault. This discrimination was based on personal characteristics, including, but not limited to, sexual orientation and gender expression. Here's the thing. Studies show GSAs actually work. When schools have GSAs, queer students feel like they belong more. They do better in class, and they're more likely to want to go to college. Mentally, they feel more confident, less depressed, and are less likely to seriously think about suicide. However, less than half of LGBTQ plus students with a GSA at school reported having participated in the club. Frankly, hate against queer students is still common, so GSAs existing as a support system for students is still important, but their importance doesn't mean they can't be better. Some people think a rebrand isn't necessary. They say GSAs already represent activism and inclusion. And sure, maybe that was true in the past, but now the meaning has gotten lost. LGBTQ plus students are either unaware of or avoiding GSAs, since only less than half of queer students are actually taking advantage of them. That's why I think we need something new. If we work with teachers, students, and leaders like Sasha, we could reimagine what these clubs are, not by abandoning the mission, but by finding new ways to make it real again. A new name, the same purpose, and a better approach. So, the real question is, how do we make GSAs cool again? And how do we bring political conversations and action back into GSAs? We need a GSA rebrand. First, we need to reconnect GSAs with their history. Students built them to organize and fight back. That history should be front and center.
The way to get through all this anti-LGBTQ legislation that has been passed this year and is going to be passed for the next 4 years is not by playing board games and chatting about your homework. It is about gathering your peers, gathering your community, and saying, what can we do?
Second, let's change the name. Gender and Sexuality Alliance? No. We need a name that reflects what the club should actually be. Resistance, community, and power. I suggest a Power and Pride, or PIP, club. This name is still catchy, has a nice ring to it, and centers the core values of the GSA. Third, ask who's not at the table. Too often, GSAs are spaces where white students feel seen, but queer students of color don't. That needs to change. We should be empowering all queer voices in the fight, especially marginalized ones. And finally, visibility matters. Schools should work with students to promote these spaces. That means announcements, posters, social media promo, collabs with other clubs, and real support from staff. Why is it so important that GSAs are politically active? Because history shows it works. The progress we made didn't happen on its own. From the beginning, the queer liberation movement was also a youth movement, and one of the primary places from which it spread was high school. It came from young people showing up and fighting, like the students who started the very first GSA at George Washington High School right here in New York City. Picture this. It's 1972. George Washington High in Washington Heights, Manhattan is dealing with overcrowding, racism, and student protests. Amidst all this, a group of mostly Black and Latino students formed possibly the first public high school gay-straight alliance. They demanded inclusive sex ed, fair textbooks, protections for queer teachers, and the right to organize. They saw their queerness connected to fights against poverty and racism. They were teenagers in a public school leading a revolution. But today, GSAs aren't serving their intended communities as they should. Many clubs are mostly white, even though queer people of color have always driven LGBTQ+ activism. When I brought up GSAs, so many of my friends said, "What is that?" Or, "We have that?" That's alarming. It's 2025 and things are clearly shifting in the wrong direction. Politically, socially, and in schools. The avoidance of politics in GSAs is because it's comfortable. But progress isn't comfortable. If we want things to change, GSAs need to change too. With a thoughtful rebrand, these clubs could become what they were always meant to be. A place for students to come together, speak out, and stand up for each other. The fight isn't over, and it's time we remember that. By reconnecting to the activist roots through adopting an intentional name, centering queer students of all perspectives, and increasing publicity, GSAs can reclaim their purpose, and we can reclaim our power.